Welcome back, Hex Tribe. In this video, we're going to talk all about crypto yield farming. Is it good or bad? And as always, guys, you should know the answer to that. It's not black or white like everybody wants it to be, but come on, guys, I'm not stupid. I know what's going on in the ecosystem, especially in the PulseChain network. Everybody is now faced with these new things to do, these new buttons to click, new protocols to try out, and we're not used to it. And a lot of people are very scared and timid. You know, it's like cavemen discovering fire for the first time, right? Some people are going to take advantage of it, and some people are going to burn their faces off, right? So stick around till the end because I'm going to give you my thoughts, but really I'm going to try to lead you to your own conclusions about taking responsibility for your own actions in this world. And it's not going to be a lecture about what to do, what not to do. I'm just going to talk about what I'm doing personally, how I think about the risks involved and the strategies involved in crypto yield farming, and how I kind of weigh the pros and the cons, the dangers and the benefits. So what is yield farming, guys? Obviously, we should all know this by now, but it's basically when you go to a new decentralized exchange and you can either put your coins into yield farms or pools. Okay, pools are single-sided. Yield farms require you to put up both coins for people to trade in and out of. So farms and pools, farms and pools. Farms 2 coins, pools 1 coin. That's all it is, farms and pools. Now, you've got all kinds of blockchains out here that have existed for years, that have been doing this for years. So this concept is nothing new really in the crypto space, but it's new in the PulseChain ecosystem because PulseChain just came out 45 days ago. Still a brand new chain. 45 days, that's it. But a lot of people are confronted with these decisions to make. Do I try yield farming? Is the impermanent loss too risky? How do I even do it? Guys, you just go in there and click buttons, okay? If you want to farm for yield, you go in there and you just click around and you figure out what you're going to do. It should be very self-explanatory, but whether or not you should enter these certain pools or whether you should be participating in other decentralized exchanges, that is a question worth pondering a little bit, right? So the whole point of this video is to try to get you to think for yourself and obviously not look to some guru for all the answers on YouTube or on the internet, because anyone can say whatever they want. On Telegram, on Twitter, people can make up their own narratives and you could get sucked into them. Or you could think for yourself and have self-sovereignty and be a grown-up and take responsibility for your actions, which is really, that's what crypto is all about. It's about self-sovereignty. But it's difficult. I understand it's difficult, and it's the question on everybody's mind. It's the topic on everyone's mind, and it's kind of a short-term versus long-term trade-off, right? Short-term thinking versus long-term thinking. Now, the gist of it is basically this, okay? When any new yield farm comes out, the APRs that you get are always outrageously high. I mean, look at these on PulseX right here. APRs of 179%. That's crazy high, right? Where are you going to get 179% returns anywhere else in the real world at all? It's just unheard of. But this is still too low for some people. Some people are chasing yield farms where the yield is 400 or 500%. And is this good or bad? Well, as always, guys, it's a gray area. It's neither good nor bad. But people will look at this in crypto. Only in crypto do our degen minds say, oh, 179% APY? That's it? You know, that's ridiculously high, but it sounds ridiculous, right? But you need to know this, basically. What makes these yields go up and down is the APY goes up when the incentive coin pumps, and every different DEX has their own different incentive coin. In PulseX.com, it's straight up just called incentive coin. We're not beating around the bush here. That's all it is. INC is incentive coin. And every DEX that you will see, and you will be pitched a lot of DEXs in the very near future, they're all going to have their own incentive coin. That's just how this game works, okay? And so if a particular farm or pool is paying out X number of incentive coins per year, well, obviously, if the price of that goes up, then the APY is going to go up. If the price of the incentive coin goes down, obviously the APY of that pool or farm is going to go down because the APYs that are shown on the screen are tied to US dollar values. And those US dollar values are tied to coins that go up and down because people trade them all day long. But also, when more people enter the pool, the incentive token rewards that were distributed to that pool or farm, remember, pools and farms. Farms, 2 coins, pools, single-sided staking. When more people enter a farm, as a farm matures, and usually these things mature in like 2 to 3 months, maybe 6 months at the most, the yield comes down drastically from where it was. And so usually APY dries up in the long term, if you want to call it drying up. Now, 24% APY, still pretty darn good for coins in, let's say, more stable pairs like this, where you have lower impermanent loss risk. 24% might still sound good for a lot of people. It does for me. I kept my liquidity position in the PulseX pair just because my impermanent loss isn't that bad. And the coins were just going to be sitting around there anyway, so why not be earning yield on them? But there's a lot of other factors we're going to get into, okay? APY usually dries up in the long term, which is why you have this mentality of people in crypto that just hop from yield farm to yield farm every day. They're always looking for the new DEX. They have no allegiance, no loyalty, and a lot of these people can't really think in terms of years, okay? They're thinking about next week, next month, where they're going to park their money, and where they're going to flip to next, okay? They have no allegiance to anything, and they don't understand long-term thinking, which is what really wins in cryptocurrency. And it's easy to get sucked into this because there's new yield farms popping up all the time, and you've got a lot of dormant coins sitting around, so you're sitting there asking yourself, well, shouldn't I just be putting these coins to use in this yield farm over here? And the answer is sometimes, maybe sometimes. Now, some people are just going to think any new thing is bad, and they're going to be scared of any new thing, and that's okay. Whether or not you're a total ape degen that hops from yield farm to yield farm like a honeybee, or whether you're just an OG HEX maximalist, all you do is staking, that's totally fine either way. Both of these strategies can work. Some are more dangerous, some are safer, but at the end of the day, you have to admit that liquidity is needed for any ecosystem. You need to bootstrap liquidity. On decentralized exchanges, we rely on the communities to put up liquidity. So I'm choosing to put up some of my coins, not all. Personally, it's somewhere between 10 and 20% of my total bags are dedicated to liquidity pools because things can always go wrong, and there always might be new opportunities in the future as well. But liquidity is needed. You need people to be able to swap one coin for another, and there's no centralized company that puts up liquidity on public blockchains. You need the community to do it. And in a way, these are actually good, right? Farms and pools are good because theoretically they reduce sell pressure from people that might have otherwise just dumped their coins. You can park them in liquidity pools to let other people trade in and out of them, and you could potentially take sell pressure off the table temporarily. But now we need to talk about active versus passive investing, okay? It's really personal preference here. This is why there's no right or wrong answer. A lot of you guys are going to like passive investing, which is what we've been doing in HEX for, since 2019. Just staking, setting it, and forgetting it. And really, this works almost all the time in safe, secure products, stores of value that go up and to the right over the long run in the macro, 5, 10, 15 years later. These passive investors, a lot of them may outperform a lot of these active investors. I mean, in the real world, in traditional finance, passive investing in index funds over the long term often beats active investing, okay? But active investing can win if you're smart and identify opportunities and you really keep an eye on where your bags are, okay? And it's a spectrum. Things are not active or passive. For example, this safer PulseX PLS liquidity farm that I believe is more safe, it's still pretty passive to me. I don't really have to check on it every day because I check on it maybe once every few days. Hey, I've earned some more INC token. Hey, the ratio went a little bit this way or that way, but for the most part, things are pretty safe. And I don't necessarily have to worry so much about, the price of PLS crashing relative to the price of PLSX or vice versa. That's what you're worried about in liquidity farms. Remember, guys, if you watch my last video, link right above, my tutorial on liquidity farming is that you want tokens with high volume and low volatility, which are contradictory. But you want a lot of trades to be going in and out of the pair, and you don't want the prices of each one of these coins to really move too much against one another, which is why, that's why we say in liquidity farming, you are long volume and short volatility. You want volume and you don't want volatility. Anyway, active versus passive. You need to ask yourself, how active or passive do you want to be? And there's another point to be made about being early versus being safe, okay? If you want to ape into every new liquidity farm under the sun that comes your way, there's probably going to be 10 or 20 or more liquidity farms coming your way during this next year or two. And if you're early to all of them, remember that's when the API is typically highest. So if you're early, you have the potential to make more of those early yield farming gains, those degen ape-in gains. But you also run the risk of the DEX just simply rugging, outright rug pulls. Okay, rug pulls and scams happen all the time, and they're coming. They're coming to PulseChain. We've already seen a couple. Now, one thing I like to ask myself about liquidity farms and new decentralized exchanges is there differentiated value here? Okay, that's why I talk about PHUX and PulseX separately, because they do different things. Okay, FUX offers, indexes and deep liquidity for stable swap pairs. FUX can do things that PulseX cannot. But PulseX is still the premier DEX on PulseChain with the most liquidity for the everyday person swapping. And there's great things about both. FUX has weighted pools where you can do more than one coin and you can weight them differently. So I see certain dexes as having differentiated value. Some dexes out there might advertise themselves as being, the dex for all the meme coins, right? We'll see how that plays out. Some dexes out there aren't actually dexes at all, and they tie in their liquidity to PulseX itself. Some new dexes out there are simply just new pools and farms that they slapped onto PulseX and called it a different website. And that's not a terrible idea. That's a pretty good idea for people, actually. Assuming that these sites are safe, there are certain protocols out there that simply utilize PulseX liquidity pools, and they allow for farms and pools from PulseX PLP. For example, if you have PulseX PLP tokens, a different protocol could just simply allow you to stake those PLP tokens in the farms over on that website, and you would accrue some coins. And it's a pretty innovative way of handling alternative farms and pools. Right now, PulseX doesn't have any single-sided staking, but a lot of the features on PulseX are slow to roll out because Richard and the team who ultimately makes decisions about this, they're way more long-term minded. There's a reason why PulseX pools don't just exist from day one, and why there's not just hundreds of farms out here with crazy yield. Think about why these decisions are being made, rather than just complaining that, I don't see my instant gratification here now, so I'm just going to go hop to the next best thing. And you can if you want, right? But you're always rolling the dice on that one. Next, you've got to ask yourself, is this new decentralized exchange helping or hurting the cause, right? Just like we saw with the PulseChain launch, there's a lot of people that will say that they have the best interest of your community in mind, but then act in ways that deliberately go against that. I mean, there's people out there that sacrificed for PulseX, of all things, and now all of a sudden they're in other yield farming protocols and they're bashing PulseX. It's like, why wouldn't you want to help pump your own bags? I mean, look, multiple dexes can exist at the same time, but there's a lot of what's called vampire attacks. For example, what happened with SushiSwap and Uniswap. SushiSwap tried to steal all the liquidity from Uniswap, and these people, these short-term minded plebs with no allegiance to anything, they just jumped ship and just tried spinning a narrative that, Uniswap kind of sucks now, guys. We should all be over on SushiSwap. So be wary of people that are antagonizing one chain in favor of the other, because a lot of these dexes, if they really are good and they really do have a differentiated value and a use case, and they're helping the cause of all the ecosystem tokens like HEX, PulseX, PulseChain, they don't need to make the other dexes their enemy, right? They don't need to all of a sudden spin this narrative where, PulseX sucks now, right? You think about what you're doing here, and think about whether or not you're joining a community that's actually hurting your own bags in a way, right? You might be joining a dex that all of a sudden starts to try to diminish and hurt the prices of all the coins that you already probably own. Pulse, PulseX, and HEX, other things like that. Now, I haven't seen anything like this yet, right? I've seen about 4 different dexes. Well, 3 dexes, and let's call it 3.5 dexes on PulseChain so far. And I, for the most part, don't think any of these things are that nefarious, okay? But they don't seem to be nefarious, but there will be other blatant outright scams in the future, okay? Just because I haven't seen anything so far doesn't mean it's not going to happen. And here's another thing, guys. Here's another thing that a lot of people that play this liquidity farming game don't really talk about. I mean, this is basically the game, right? But it's like, who's buying these incentive coins? If you refer to my last videos, I blatantly tell you that I'm not buying INC. If I get new dry powder to buy coins, it's going into HEX first. It's going into PulseChain and PulseX before it goes into INC. For me personally, okay, maybe some people want to buy INC, but the game here with all these liquidity locusts is that they go from dex to dex and they really just kind of permadump the incentive coin while tricking other people to buy the incentive coin so that they can sell the incentive coin back to get more of the tokens that they originally want. So for example, if I'm farming on a dex somewhere, I'm much more likely to be selling my reward token, whatever that reward token is, to accumulate more PLS, more HEX, more of the coins I like. I have no interest in holding these incentive coins long term because I know how these things go. I know that the liquidity dries up. I know people jump ship and move to the next thing. And I know that the prices of all these coins in the long term don't do very well. Okay, maybe they flatline, which is great, but they rely on basically tricking new people into buying them so that other people can dump those tokens or at least swap them into more longer term holds that go up higher in the long run. Okay, I mean, take a look at Binance Smart Chain, right? Binance Smart Chain is the king of yield farm degeneracy. Look at here on Dex Screener, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 dexes up here, and look under the more section. You've got 40 dexes over here. Binance Smart Chain has 46 dexes on here most of which are a total joke, right? Baby swap, right? You've got baby Doge. I mean, you've got these things that look like, that you look at them and you're like, oh, I'm not surprised that nobody takes crypto seriously, right? But they all look more or less the same. Here's a couple of the websites from the Binance Smart Chain dexes. Look at this little elephant. That's you. That's what they think you look like. It's kind of offensive, right? You're a stupid little elephant, slamming the buy button over and over, pushing buttons. And yeah, they've all got pools and liquidity farms. The baby one might be the most offensive. It's like, you're as dumb as a baby if you're using this one. But anyway, look, earn. You've got farms and pools. Farms and pools. These are all forks of the same code, which is called the Master Chef contract, which is basically Uniswap v2, okay? Farms and pools over here. Look at this one. You can go ahead and earn from farms and pools. Look at this one, silly Doge thing, farms and pools, right? Pools are single-sided, farms are basically liquidity farming on 2 coins, putting up your liquidity. Ape swap, right? Because we're all just dumb apes that ape into everything. Staking, pools and farms, pools and farms. But let's see how these coins often do. Right? Look at these coins in the long run, okay? And I'm not telling anybody to go looking these up. I really hope you guys don't, because there's endless amounts of these dexes on every different blockchain. That was only Binance Smart Chain, which had like 46 dexes. Every blockchain that comes into existence has a bunch of people trying to capitalize on these coins. But look at how the incentive coins turn out. Yeah, they might pump in the short term and everyone's all excited. Look, everyone's all excited when they first launch for a month or two. Maybe some other narrative comes along where it pumps again. But in the long run, they just go kind of down or flatline. And they're just not really good long-term holds. Here's another one of those DEX coins, right? The incentive tokens. Here's another one, kind of down into the right. Here's another one. This one's held up pretty well, but it's slowly down into the right, you know? If I was farming this token, I personally, I'm telling you right now, I would be using it to accumulate more of the blue chip stuff that I like. Mostly talking about HEX and PulseChain here, personally, okay? I mean, I'll tell you guys an actual thing that I did in the bull market this last year. When HEX was moving over to Polygon temporarily to try to solve the gas fee issue, I mean, I don't know who remembers that, but there was this little DEX called QuickSwap where their incentive coin was basically called Quick Token. And this is what I say in the bull market. Sometimes things are more dangerous in the bull market than they are in the bear market. So I aped into QuickSwap token literally when it was hundreds of dollars right over here, right around $500. So look, this tiny little green part over here is where I bought QuickSwap token, and I ended up selling it at a loss. I think I lost like $10,000 on that one because I was stupid and I aped in to a DEX incentive token that I didn't understand. And then of course, down to the right forever. Glad I got out pretty early and it was a relatively minor hit, but a learning lesson for me that I'm now trying to share with you. Okay, all of these things are the same. It's the same game over and over, nothing new under the sun. I just want you to know that a lot of people might be trying to tell you to buy these incentive coins when really they're dumping them. And there's nothing wrong with using them as a passive income source, right? You just don't want to be the one buying the bag and holding the bag. So I'll wrap this video up with some pros and cons of DEX yield farming, okay? Obviously, yield farming is good because it promotes people to put up liquidity, and you need liquidity to foster a good ecosystem. If you want to strengthen an ecosystem, you need liquidity there. You need people to be able to buy and sell large amounts of the coin without slippage. And so you incentivize people to provide liquidity with these incentive tokens and with these new yield farms, and sometimes with these single-sided staking pools too. Now, farms and pools can reduce sell pressure, all right? So if you've got your money locked up in a farm and a pool, you're not selling it, right? So technically that can take sell pressure off the table, which is not a bad thing at all. And they can also add stickiness to an ecosystem. So like I said, guys, there's a couple of DEXs out there right now. I'm thinking about 4 in particular that I'm aware of. I don't really have a huge problem with any of them, okay? I kind of like most of them. I've talked about FUX openly, and obviously I love PulseX, which is the primary. And they can just be kind of new games for people to play to make it more sticky for those short-term-minded people that need something to do every day, that people that don't like long-term holding. But I would much rather people do long-term holding because it works way better, you know, but I'd be a hypocrite if I said I wasn't doing yield farming myself, because I am, right? I'm doing long-term holding, I've got a staking ladder, and I'm also doing yield farming. You know, if I decide to join a new yield farm in the future, I'm almost certainly going to be selling whatever incentive token that thing is for more Pulse or more HEX or more PulseX, maybe some Hedron or other coins that I like. But I mean, it can be looked at as a passive income source if you know what you're doing, but it's also very, very risky, right? What are the risks? I've talked about impermanent loss before. Okay, you should know the risks of impermanent loss and understand that If you don't pick the right pairs, you can have impermanent loss. And go to my last video, Google it. But if you still don't understand what impermanent loss is, then maybe you're better off just staying and sitting this one out. Because again, long-term holding will win in the long run. Okay, it always does. Rug pulls. This is something we haven't seen yet, but I guarantee you it's coming. Okay, there will be a rug pull on PulseChain, at least one. There are going to be dexes out there that claim to be these hot new yield farms that people will rush into on day one or week one that might rug pull after a month. So you want to make sure you're looking for audits, looking in the Pulse Police Telegram channel, looking for people that have kind of understood the code. Basically, most dexes are simply copies of Uniswap v2, okay, which is called the Master Chef contract. But the more changes that are made to these dexes, the more things can go wrong. Okay, a rug pull might not be intentional. It might just be due to some shitty code and a bug in the code. Or oftentimes rug pulls are very intentional and people just don't look under the hood, as we just saw with, a certain rug pull that claimed to be a fork of GMX just in the past couple weeks, okay? Now, another con of liquidity providing is it promotes this dopamine chasing liquidity locust behavior. They're called liquidity locusts because they just fly and swarm to wherever the hot new liquidity pool is, and they literally don't care. They can't fathom holding any coin for more than 6 months, right? 6 months for some people is a long-term hold, which is a joke. I've held crypto for 8 years now. I've got HEX stakes for 15 years, and really you just don't start making a lot of money unless you're a long-term holder, okay? So it promotes this short-termism thinking, which I don't love, but I understand that it's a necessary evil sometimes. It also gives people distractions, like shiny object syndrome, so people might get tricked into thinking that these new yield farms have this hot new DEX token that's going to go up and to the right forever. That's almost never the case. I've never seen a single instance where that is the case. Okay, personally, I've never seen it. I'm not saying it can't happen. But don't be chasing the shiny new DEX token, because just beware, there's a bunch of other people dumping it on you to get more of the long-term coins that they like. And then there's blatant vampire attacks. And the vampire attacks are very silly because they try to trick people psychologically into these narratives of, oh, PulseX is dead, Richard Hart gave up on the project, and they'll just make up on all this stuff, right? Richard Hart rug pulled you all, come on over to my DEX. And then that'll last for a good 3 months, and they'll be on to the next thing. People are so early to call things failed or, oh, this thing failed. They don't realize that it's literally been 45 days. It's been a month and a half, okay? If it feels like it's been a year, that's because you are focusing too much on the minutia of what everyone's chirping online, everyone's tweeting, everyone's saying in Telegram. Nobody out here knows what they're talking about, and they're not long-term thinkers. So be wary before you jump into the next DEX that comes your way. Obviously, they're not all scams. Some of them are actually kind of helpful and beneficial. And I believe there is room for more than one DEX. We don't need 40, but maybe there will be 3 or 4 that end up taking the cake in the long run. Think about your balance of risk to safety, right? Your balance of how much passive income do I want versus how much do I want to risk? Because look, guys, you can join one of these pools and you can literally lose all your money. I could join one of these pools and I could be losing all my money. I'm in a couple of liquidity farms and pools right now that I haven't really fully vetted because I'm not reading the code. Are you reading the code line for line? I don't even know how to do that. And the vast majority, 99.9% of people in crypto have no idea how to read code. They don't know if it's safe or not. And so that means if one of these yield farms rugs, that's on you or that's on me if I choose to join one. I understand that getting into these hot new yield farms is tempting, but I also understand that there's a real rug risk. There's a real risk of something bad happening. Again, you've got to ask yourself, do you want a passive or an active approach? How passive or active do you want to be? But also just realize that these DEX yield farms are typically short-lived things. Now, we've seen INC shoot up right away and go down in price. Now, INC might be one of the ones that'll have a couple of spikes in the future, I predict, because I'm predicting that other people in the community are going to invent new use cases for INC token. A lot of DEXs out there probably will never bother to do anything with their INC token, their version of INC token, right? And so you'll just see a slow decrease after the initial hype wave and the initial pump. Again, guys, all the charts kind of look the same. They're always hyped in the beginning, and then they just kind of slowly die while people take profit and exit into, more long-term holds. And yeah, having more liquidity does strengthen the community, but we kind of want these to be different enough where they're not stealing liquidity from one another and they have their own differentiated value prop. And really be wary of the people that claim they're on your team, that claim, oh yeah, we love HEX and PulseChain and everything, and then they just totally turn and start, antagonizing and basically trying to do a vampire attack, because that'll happen too. And again, really think about it, guys. Think about Richard. Think about what a long-term minded person he is. And there's a reason that these farms and these pools are slow to change, okay? You don't want to use all your tricks on day one, okay? Because after a certain point, you can only add so many yield farms before they stop working. You can only add so many pools before the hype dies down and nobody cares anymore because they're all on to the next thing now. So minor tweaks is what he's doing. He hasn't even added pools yet. This, in my opinion, is almost like an ace up his sleeve, right? If there is ever a real contender that's trying to steal or vampire attack PulseX, you could just launch a couple pools on here and instantly everybody would drive back to the original because, again, nobody seems to have any allegiance. Everyone's kind of forgotten why we're here. We're here for the long term. And you can play these short-term games, right? But you're going to win short-term prizes. As long as you know that. I mean, I understand that. I'm playing some of these short-term games too. But I understand that a lot of these things are winning short-term prizes. And I'm willing to take that risk, the impermanent loss risk, the rug pull risk, all the risks that go along with that. And so be wary of new dexes coming out and saying that they're helping the ecosystem. And if they really were helping the ecosystem, well then, what would they be tying their liquidity to? Hopefully they'd be incentivizing, PLS farms or HEX farms or PulseX farms or Hedron farms and other stuff like that. If they're not incentivizing people to lock these coins up in pools or provide liquidity in farms, then I'd be pretty skeptical of their actual morals of if they actually care about the original coins at all. So that's it, guys. Just a warning, chasing stupid farms will leave you holding the bag on the shitty coins, but at the end of the day, it's up to you. So think for yourself, make your own decisions about what you want to enter. Be careful, make sure that things are audited and safe, and try to be a good judge of character. But at the end of the day, you're responsible. If you join a pool and it rugs, that's on you. We can be almost certain about PulseX, that PulseX is working, that it's not a rug pull. Even things like FUX, PHUX that I talk about, there's still a small chance that that could fail. And I'm publicly admitting that. So yes, I have liquidity positions on PHUX as well. But hey, there's a very tiny chance, in my opinion, that that could go wrong. Not intentionally, but, wherever there's something new, something can always go wrong in crypto. We're lucky any of this stuff works at all. And just be careful, guys. I don't want you guys to be the dumb money that's buying into every new narrative that's pitched to you when really the smart money is accumulating, in my opinion, more of the coins that they want. And for a lot of people too, it seems like they've forgotten somewhat about HEX staking. And HEX stakes in the longer term are yielding pretty high results, okay? An average HEX stake goes for 38% APY. Now, apparently a lot of people need to relearn how to think in that long term, right? Because a lot of people see these temporarily high APRs and they don't realize that these don't last forever, okay? 180% APY is not going to be lasting forever. This thing is not even 2 months old, okay? It's 45 days old. Wait 6 months from now, okay? Unless things change, unless the bonus multipliers are changed on the back end here. And this goes for any DEX too. Any single DEX will have crazy high APRs at first, and they'll go down slowly over time as more and more people join. That's just the game. So your 250% APY is going to go down to 100% next month and 50% next month. And then, 6 months later, you're going to be looking at 10% APY. And at that point, HEX staking will be better yield than some of these silly yield farms. So I hope this video helped you understand the game that you're playing. As always, like and subscribe, leave a comment, share the video, and I'll see you on the next one.